Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to open this informal meeting, I suppose, for the teacher legislative priorities from Union County Public Schools. And on behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to express our gratitude and thanks to our representatives and our senator for joining us on such short notice and changing your schedules today in Raleigh to drive all the way to Union County to be here tonight. So we thank you for wanting to be here to go over our teacher legislative priorities. I am Melissa Merrill. I'm the chairman of the Board of Education, and I will go through. We have Mr. Gary Sides, vice chair, Ms. Kathy Heintel, Ms. Leslie Boyd, Mr. Joe Morial, Matt Helms, Ms. Christina Helms, our superintendent, Dr. Andrew Houlihan. And we also have joining us tonight, Ms. Linda Davis from Marshville Elementary. She is the Union County Public Schools lead representative for the NCAE. And we have Mr. Harvey Bagshaw III from Stallings Elementary, and he is the Union County Public Schools representative for our Professional Advisory Council. So we greatly thank our two teachers for, at short notice also, putting together our agenda for tonight, the highlights that we will discuss. And I will also note that Mr. Matt Helms and myself are the two legislative liaisons for the Board of Education with our representatives in Raleigh. And so Mr. Helms and I will be kind of overseeing this and trying to move things along. He'll explain that in a minute. But just so that our representatives know, Ms. Davis earned her degree in early childhood education. She has been working in education since 1989. She started out with CMS and has been at Marshville Elementary for over 20 years at this point, with 29 years teaching experience. Mrs. Davis has taught kindergarten, first, second, and fourth grade. She has also served as a reading interventionist, and she is presently teaching first grade. And Mr. Bagshaw is from, again, Stallings Elementary. He is certified in teaching birth through sixth grade. He is also nationally board certified. Congratulations. He has taught in every grade from pre-K to fifth, and currently in his position at Stallings, he teaches fifth grade, where he enjoys being the science expert. So that gives you a little bit of background on our two outstanding teachers at the table with us tonight. And over the weekend, with Mrs. Davis as our lead, similar to our legislative breakfast when our board has met with you in the past, we have put together 10 to 15 items that the Board of Education would like for you to champion for us in Raleigh. And so what I asked Mrs. Davis to do with the current situation with teachers this week, I asked her to do a similar format and pick 10 items that were specific to teaching in Union County Public Schools. And she has prepared 3 different categories that we'll go over tonight. And I copied you on it earlier today, but she has prepared 10 items for discussion. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Helms.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, I would like to introduce Senator Tommy. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to start out by thanking everybody, the representatives that came. I'm going to start out by introducing Senator Tommy Tucker. He represents District 35, which encompasses Union County. He's serving his 4th term in the Senate. He's the co-chair of the Senate Finance Committee and co-chair of the Senate Select Committee on Nomination. And next we have Representative Dean Arp. He represents District 69 in Union County. He's serving his 3rd term in the House. He's the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, chair of the House Energy and Public Utilities Committee. And next we have Representative Mark Brody. No. He represents District 55, Union and Anson County. He's serving his third term in the House, chair of the House Agricultural Committee, and chair of the House and Community College Committee. And last but not least, we have Representative Craig Horn. He represents District 68, and he's serving his fourth term in the House. He is the chair of the House Education K through 12 Committee and chair of the House Education Appropriations Committee. And I'll kind of explain the rules to you tonight. We have 10 items on the agenda, and we're going to allow each representative 2 minutes each to respond to each item. And then if you have any questions, you can revert them to the NCAA rep and the Professional Advisory Council rep. And I'll let you know about 1 minute. I'll put my hand up. And then when 2 minutes is up, I'll say time's up. And I'll give you a little bit of grace period. Are there any questions?
So what I would like to do, using Mrs. Davis's document, the teacher legislative priorities that were sent to you earlier today for 2017-18 from Union County Public Schools, there are numerous concerns that the teachers of Union County Public Schools, the NCAE, and Professional Advisory Council wish to highlight here tonight. These concerns fall into the broad categories, or into three broad categories, the first being resources and school environment, secondly, safety and student well-being, and third, teacher preparation and remuneration. That's a new word for Mrs. Merrill. So those are the three categories, and we will begin with resources and school environment.
Madam Chair, also I forgot to mention too, to keep it fair, I'm going to start from the left on the first item and go left to right, and then it will start with Dean next item, and then so on and so on, to keep it fair. So. Okay.
And what I would do is, I think it would be best if Mrs. Davis, if the two of you would like to take turns, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll let you read your own statements rather than me read it for you, and then we will start the time for each response. So Mrs. Davis, if you'd like to start with number 1.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to let everyone know where these items were created from. I took Union County Public Schools agenda and what we wanted, what Union County, me being in there for 28 years, what we thought that the legislative agenda for Union County Public Schools, and I combined it with NCAEs and see how they overlapped. So with that being done, I came up with these 9 items. And that way we could kind of work together as one entity to see if we can't get some of these things that we see that may be a problem, get them somehow in some actions to help improve these items. So with that being said, and Harvey and I, we worked really close together. It wasn't just mine. Harvey also played a major part in getting this together too. So with that being said, you want to read the first one or you want me to read it? Okay.
Number 1, under resources and school environment, part of ensuring a strong school environment includes providing a student-to-teacher ratio that allows for individualized teacher instruction and reasonable class sizes. The move to decrease class size in K-3 should not result in elimination of non-academic classes or the increase in class sizes for grades 4 through 12.
And Senator Tucker, we will start with you.
Okay, is this on? Yeah, now it is. Well, first of all, I'm not an expert in education. My work has primarily been in mental health and developmental disabilities, and also substance abuse on the health committee. The two gentlemen to my left are, as a student in education, Dean, having served 12 years on the Union County Board of Education, and Craig, chair of education. Both of these gentlemen work very hard in education and can answer some of the questions. I can give you a perspective from a Senate standpoint that we, in 2014, addressed the student ratio. We also sent about $114 million with that. Some of the school districts were told that they didn't need to worry about any kind of appropriation there. and that they could use the money for what they wish. And some of them, including Union County, probably hired some of the reading teachers and those kind of folks to help supplement in the classroom. So now we have come back and readdressed the situation and put off you having to buy trailers and all the turmoil that was created, and tried to settle that down prior to this next coming school year. That's all I got to say, Matt.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening. And thank you for the question. I think it's very timely. I think with the latest requirement, class size reduction, the General Assembly also believes that lower class sizes is beneficial for student outcomes and learning, especially in the lower grades. And that's where we focused on that. And so what we've done is really hold to making sure all the schools districts have that lower class size ratio. It was actually, we were told to hold off from the school districts and phase it in. So with House Bill 90, which is already passed, we have phased that in to achieve that kind of a glide slope, if you will, to get there in 4 years. With that, we also put funding, significant funding, that escalates year over year to make sure we don't lose the enhancement classes at the expense of lowering class sizes. It's a significant effort. It's a significant amount of money. And I would tell you that that is a plan that I thought had great buy-in from everybody.
Can I respond to that? I'm all for lowering class size, and you do have the buy-in for that. I think we all agree that the research shows that student achievement goes up with lower class size. I think where the concern that I speak for myself and some others is that when we have to lower those class sizes in K2, K3, which it's really crucial there, I've taught those grades, but when we're not getting the extra funding for teachers, you're not keeping the 5th grade level. I'm not asking you to lower my class size, but I'm not asking you to increase it to 35 students. So that's where my concern is, and I think where we hear a lot of concerns from teachers. We're all for lowering class size, but it's a domino effect up to the upper grades where we're losing that.
So you're saying not at the cost of your 4th grade or 5th grade class sizes?
Right, because you're having to shift those teachers around.
Right.
And so I lose a 5th grade teacher from my team, and I have to absorb those extra 25 students. So it bumps me up to 31 students, 35 students.
I think Craig can unpack that a little bit more, but we were cognizant of that, and that's why we have additional funding so that we don't, this year.
Actually, how we've done this is we began we had a mandate to lower average class size, let's say from 21 to 18. The school districts explained that if we did that, in order to find the teachers, we need, obviously, we're going to have trailers, we're going to have more teachers, may have to steal them from here, steal them from there. They said, you're going to have to fund it. Of course, the legislature said, well, we funded this a long time ago, but we gave you the flexibility to do whatever you wanted. And some districts chose to lower class sizes. Some districts chose that because their needs were a little different, they chose to use the money for reading coaches, whatever. So what the legislature came back and did about, I don't know, sometime in July, I believe, we passed House Bill 90, which did 2 things. First of all, it phased in over a 4-year period the reduced class size, over a 4-year period. And it funded it at $60 million a year compounded over 4 years, i.e. $240 million by the end of the 4th year. So at the same time, we also delayed the implementation a year. So the first year, we've added $60 million, but no requirement to lower class size. The second year, we'll add $120 million, but you only need to lower class size by 1. The third year, another 60, $180 million, you need to lower class size by 2. And the 4th year, $240 million ongoing. So as a consequence, it's not going to be necessary to raid 4th, 5th, 6th grade. It's not going to be necessary to take what some people call enhancement teachers. And by the way, as an aside, for me and for many others, music, PE, and art is not an enhancement. It's fundamental to a good education. So I abhor that statement, enhancement, but they've come to be called enhancement teachers. So what we've done, again, twofold. We have rolled this out over a period of time, and we've added 60 million a year compounded, so 240 million. So there is no need for the additional cost to the LEA, nor to raid their other teachers. Now, that's the whole thing, but I come back to something you said that I just could not, it's bothersome to me. And it's bothersome in concept about lower class sizes. And the reason it's bothersome in concept is I think we all know teachers that can handle larger classes than others. It depends on the teacher, depends on the course, it depends on the kids, it depends on the socioeconomic, depends on lots of stuff. So to just say lower class sizes, that's not a magic bullet to improve student outcomes. That's not a magic bullet. Now, it does seem logical that lower class sizes are better. But there's until you get to 15 to 1 or fewer, there's very little evidence that those lower class sizes actually do impact student outcomes. And for me, it's all about student outcomes. So no, we're not thrusting a lower class size on you with no money. We're not causing you to take away your enhancement, quote, enhancement teachers. And we are ponying up with 240 million bucks ongoing as we phase in the whole process.
It's baked into the budget.
And it's baked in, that's right. This is not one of those bait and switch deals that legislatures are known for. Oh, look at this shiny thing, and next year we'll do something else. No, we're baking it into the base budget.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd first like to, once again, like everyone else, thank Union County School Board for allowing us to get together and discuss this. And I've had a chance to go over the questions, and I think they're very significant. I want to just say, so you understand that unlike all three of my colleagues here, I represent two counties, and two counties that are on the extreme ends of the spectrum of student performance and student funding and tax value, to be able to pay for certain things. I represent Union and Anson County. And I think that's important. When I get into this discussion, I'm going to have to look at both of these, and really sometimes one county, I wrote down here, what may be considered a need for one county may be considered a luxury for another. Anson County is in desperate need of a lot of things different than Union County. I'm thankful that I'm a Union County rep. I'm proud of the fact that Union County does so well, but I've been elected to two counties, and that's how I represent. To get onto the issue, obviously Senator Tucker said it, Representative Horn and Representative Arp are our experts in this. If you want to talk about community colleges, then I can jump in there. If you want to talk about agriculture, I can jump in there. But we each have our expertise, and that's how the whole system functions well, is not everybody can know everything about every subject. So I want to just briefly address what I would probably say is missing, which is not much, but it needs to be said, is number one, the class size issue was driven by the public. The public demanded it. We reacted to it, and we put something in there to do it. And the two people who are responsible for two different parts we're responsible for funding the curriculum and the payroll, et cetera. And the county and the county board is responsible for the infrastructure. So when we're talking about funding for teachers and programs, et cetera, then we're the ones you look to. When you say, but we don't have enough classrooms, well, you know where to look. It's at the county commission. So I wanted to make that clear also. But I also wanted to say, and of course, Representative Horn took my thunder away, but I do have it written, is that I'm a great supporter of the non-academic classes. I feel they're extremely important. My granddaughter, who goes to Union County Public Schools, she enjoys those, and her and I talk about those. When I say what happens in school, she says either she's been music or art or enrichment, and this comes out of the mouth of somebody who isn't prepped for this. These are the things that excite her, and with that excites her, then she does well in other things. So I want to say I support that. Also, and at the end, I just want to say that education is sometimes a moving target, and we seem like we're behind sometimes, but a lot of times we're catching up because education globally, et cetera, is moving, and we have to catch up. And sometimes you think you're firing at the target, and by the time a bullet gets there, it's already behind. So we've got to learn sometimes to lead a little bit, and that's the objective that we do in the General Assembly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, Madam Chair, before we move to our next item, I allowed you a little bit of grace period on the first item, so we'll be keeping better track of time next time. So, okay, I can move over there if you'd like.
We need to pay more attention.
Yeah.
And I would also like to say, as we move forward with the next 9 items, if you want to pass, if this is not an area of your expertise or the committees that you've been appointed to, and if you want to defer to the representative or Senator Tucker, if you want to share something, jump in. But we may be able to move along faster if we stick with if we allow the ones who have the answers to answer. So I will turn it over to number 2.
With mic on. School instruction should be a blend of formative and summative assessments, with the majority focusing on using assessments that promote the learning process. The amount of state-mandated testing reduce the amount of actual learning that occurs in the classroom and reduce the amount of collaborative work and project-based learning that students desperately need. Testing should be diminished to allow teachers more opportunity to formative assess students. I know there need to be some type of instrument, but the amount of testing that mandated by North Carolina is overkill. We have a lot of things that is geared to just getting these kids to pass this test. I know they need to be prepared for college. I know they need to be prepared for the workplace, but to see a kid have taught a testing grade, just to see that kid's face that day of testing, just to see their nerves, just to see what they have to go through for just 1 or 2 or 3 days of testing, I think it's just uncanny. It's almost like abuse. And I hate to put it in that manner, but I think if we could go to project-based or collaborative learning, coming up with some type of projects, more or less than this 1 day, 1 test, that does not define a student and what they should know in that 1 day. And as a teacher or as a parent, I think testing, is a place for it, but it should not be held so highly that it takes the place of a student being comfortable in their own skin.
And Representative Art. Representative Arp, you get to go first on this one.
Okay, great. And I agree. And in fact, I don't think you'll find disagreement. Ever since I was on the school board, parents and myself as a parent have been trying to reduce the required testing and the outcomes. I think we're caught, though, to be quite frankly with you, we're caught between minimum standards that everybody wants to see that their children achieve in order to succeed in after school and have those skills. The only way to do that is some type of an assessment. And I think what the difficulty is we all agree in principle that we need to reduce testing. What I would ask is, when you say mandated by North Carolina, are these state required tests in terms of what's inscribed by law, or are they required by DPI? Because what I'm getting at is what I want to ask of you and the school board here is give me a list of state mandated tests that are required by law, because I think what we'll find is that in some cases, the pre-test assessments to see how you're doing and progressing along adds to this testing weariness that comes along with that, is the guess that gets up to that. And so I'm in full agreement, and I think all my colleagues here are in agreement. What would be helpful is an actual list of tests that you recommend that we do away with.
I agree with him.
Okay.
Nothing else to say. I agree.
Well, I'm going to be just a little bit longer, but not very much, in that I also concentrate on an area called regulatory reform, and spend a lot of time. Okay.
Overmodulating.
Overmodulate. That's a good word. I like that.
It's good.
Okay. Okay.
Most politicians overmodulate.
All right, I spend a lot of time in the area of regulatory reform, and oftentimes I will find myself chasing down a reason why we do this or that for a constituent or for an industry or for a teacher or anybody that wants to do that. And not being in the education committee, so these are the folks that get the raw details. But I always found it since the very beginning is that testing seemed like a game of whack-a-mole, where you would whack down one test and another one would pop up. And is that it?
1 minute.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, I didn't see that sign. Okay. And so one would pop up, and it seemed frustrating to me that we'd say, how in the world, or why in the world can't we get rid of these tests? So I'm going to have to defer to my colleagues who are the experts in it, and yourself, like Representative Arp asked, can you give that list, and then let's see what happens. Just briefly, as long as we're on testing, I just want to make it perfectly clear that I oppose end-of-grade tests, and I haven't been very successful at fighting that, but nonetheless, I make myself clear on that. And the other thing I want to make you personally aware of is that from the beginning, I've been an avid opposition to Common Core, and will continue as often as I can to eliminate that teaching standard and replace it with something that's North Carolina based, and I think I'll get a lot of support for that out there. So far, I've had a lot of support over here, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Helms, thank you. I was supportive of a budget that reduced DPI's budget 40%. So that would eliminate some of the testing. We passed a bill in the Senate 4 years ago to eliminate testing. I saw some of them. They were ridiculous. It looks like a bureaucrat in Raleigh gets to keep a job moving paper. So I remember teachers telling me that they'd have to sit in the library on their teacher work day and sit and watch a film from DPI. I don't think that's very productive. And if we can just get that list, I'm sure these guys will work on it for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will move now to number 3.
Number 3, we ask that the state look at increasing the per pupil funding to help support acquisition of materials and digital resources that promote learning and restore funding in these areas. From what I've read, we're about 25% below the national spending per pupil. And I know back in 2008, 2009, we were at close to $6,700 per student. And since that recession, and we've been climbing out slowly, but we're still not even up to that amount yet. So I'm just curious to know where we're headed in that in regards to pupil spending.
This is one of my favorite subjects.
Money?
And the reason is
Digital learning.
that we have in North Carolina, we have enjoyed a rapidly increasing student population, which requires us to hire more teachers when we can find them. Teachers do not enter, as I'm sure, don't mean to be smart, but they don't enter the field at the mid-range of the pay or the top of the pay. They enter at the bottom of the pay. So now we've got a lot more students, a lot more teachers with an average salary that has declined because we've had teachers retiring. So the simple math tells you with a lot more teachers at a lower pay raise, you're going to have less average spending, whatever you want to call it, per pupil. That's just simple math. Now, the issue is not that simple, certainly, but as our student growth which begins to level off, which by the way it has on a statewide basis, student population has begun to decline. As our student population begins to level off, as our teachers begin to make more money, that per pupil expenditure will naturally go up, whereas it has in other states where they have a larger group of veteran teachers. At the same time, we are transitioning into a digital education environment, which is a whole new set of dynamics, and my time is up, but I would like to go back and talk about, just remind you, you got more people coming in at the lower end of the pay scale, you're going to necessarily see a lower per pupil expenditure, but that will change as population levels and as teachers gain more experience.
And I look forward to more of a discussion on the digital piece because what we're seeing is the cost per student is not the same as when we were buying textbooks in 1980. Correct. When we have so many digital needs and 21st century skills and things that we need to be working towards. Yes, we've moved away from some textbooks, but there are digital resources out there that we need for our students as well.
Correct. Absolutely.
This was a two-part question, and I think we've really covered one part of it, but the other is that we need to address the teachers spending out-of-pocket money for supplies. And I had the opportunity to spend the day at one of our elementary schools. I spent the beginning of the day in the kindergarten and the last half of the day in the 5th grade. And after each class, I was able to sit in with that grade level's teachers and in their break time, and we had a lot of discussions and we talked about this. I saw it firsthand in the kindergarten especially, that the teacher had to spend a lot of money doing that. Now, one of the questions I had was, or one of the concerns I have is you're looking at increasing per pupil funding for that, and I would say I think it would be more effective as a separate line item in the budget that would allow us to actually dedicate certain money and track. One of the questions I had asked some of the folks in education is, did you ever track how much money DPI gets in that category and how much do you get and where does it all go? And there wasn't an answer for that. I believe strongly that teachers shouldn't do that, shouldn't have to spend money on their own. These materials should be provided, including books, et cetera. And even at DPI, if we have to do books, I think there's somebody that we can use at DPI to make some of these textbooks instead of having to go buy copyrighted material from somebody else. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Tucker.
You know, on the textbook side of things, it was drastically reduced in 9 and 10. During that budget cycle, when we were not in charge, the budget for K through 12 was $7 billion. Since we've been in charge, and in this budget cycle, it's at 9.2 million. Excuse me, 9.2 billion. So we've increased funding, Ms. Bradshaw, a ton, and we'll continue to do that. But we dug out of a hole in 9 and 10. We were $2.5 billion when we went in, and we'll continue to try to get out of that as you're seeing us start to fund some things that have been neglected in the past. Thank you.
something that Representative Horn said about, excuse me, per pupil spending has something to do with the teacher salary with the newer teachers. So I'm trying to put that together. And I was talking to Mr. Bradshaw about, and I may be wrong, I may have gotten it a little confused, but you said the reason why per pupil spending, we're getting more kids in, correct? It was 7 billion when you guys first came in. We got more students. You moved it up to 9.2 billion, correct? And then our teachers are aging out and they're retiring. We're getting newer teachers. So by us having newer teachers, they're at the bottom of the pay scale, our kids are still at the bottom. So why aren't we still getting more kids? I'm just trying to relate it together. Why those teachers that are still in the classroom, we're still putting out a lot of money each year from our out-of-pocket spending. We still have things that we must have in our classroom that the school cannot provide because we don't have the funding. Our digital resources, we are on an internet that is so slow. If 5 teachers get in the room, it just stops and shut down. But you're saying per pupil spending has something to do with the amount of the years with the teachers. That's what I'm getting a little confused over. There's still a lot of teachers out there who has 15 plus years in. We have a lot of teachers because it's hard to recruit teachers because of coming into a classroom where you have to put out money where you're not making a lot of money. So per pupil spending we're getting more kids, we getting newer teachers, but just tied for me. Can he get more time? I just want him to explain more to what he said. That's all.
Okay. What goes into per pupil expenditure? The primary item that goes into per pupil expenditure is the cost of human capital, teachers. We have had, as you know, and as we've all experienced, particularly here in Union County, an incredible increase in student population. We've also, unfortunately, been losing a lot of teachers. Part of it's because of crappy pay. And I don't avoid that at all. That's absolutely right. Early on, when I say early on, I was in my second term, I guess, when I worked with the governor to create a teacher advisory group that addressed pay and all the other things, the digital resources, the textbooks, all of that. They came out after they met almost a year and came out with a plan, which we have pretty well stuck to. And the plan started with increasing pay for our lowest paid teachers because we were not being able to recruit new teachers into the field. And we're still having a challenge. We've got a lot of schools trying to get biology teachers, trying to get science teachers, really tough. So as a consequence, what I'm saying is a lot more teachers, the lower end of the scale. So that takes the average down, and then you add in a significantly increasing number of students, and you do the math, and you're going to get a lower average than you would have 5 or 10 years ago. And then particularly look at the fact that before, and I can only go by when I came into office in 2011, before that, there was in fact a decline in teacher pay. So you add all that stuff together, and here we are 6, 8 years later trying to play some catch up. Now we are playing some, but we've got a mighty big ship we're trying to turn. One last comment, and I know I've overstayed. The legislature has created a joint House-Senate task force on how we fund education. Now there's equal number of senators and members of the House. We've been calling in experts from around the country. We've had chief financial officers from the various school districts. We've had superintendents. We've got a lot more people to listen to because we don't think that we are investing our money well as it should be invested in order to support kids. We have a very sophisticated, actually very, no, shouldn't call it sophisticated. How about complicated funding formula based on all kinds of stuff? And it's evolved since it was first put in the early 90s. We're going to move to a student-centered funding formula to respond to the needs of the student. That's where our money should go. And then in those needs is the highest quality teacher in every classroom. I'm one of the chairs. The Senate chair is Senator Lee. And we meet at least once a month. We won't meet during this short session, and we'll go right back at it as soon as the session's over. So we expect to come out with a plan. Of course, we're going to come out with a plan. It's going to be full of holes. We're going to take another year's worth of testimony. So it's probably 2, 3, 4 years out down the pike. But we do have to change the way we fund education and make it more responsive to the student needs. And that should be what drives us every day.
Thank you very much for that explanation. That was very helpful. We will now move to number 4, and I will let everyone know we're 45 minutes in.
Can I respond?
Absolutely.
He took my time.
I'm sorry. No more. I won't talk anymore.
I am a big supporter of one-to-one laptop initiative technology in the classroom. We started it. We got a lot of criticism. I'm still a full supporter in technology. That's where the world is going. I think we can deliver education cheaper, better, more higher quality. But I will tell you, what we see, the question is about digital material and resources. We've given flexibility, and as a former board chair, we wanted flexibility here at the district level. What has happened is those funds have been used for laptop initiative and other things and not textbooks. And what we hear is scream, I got to have a textbook in every class. So what that does is the legislature's natural response to that is to reduce flexibility and say, okay, that's not being spent that way, so therefore we're going to appropriate it and pigeonhole and make sure it goes into this place over here. So it's a kind of catch-22. I think you heard that we all are in agreement to move digital technology forward. The key is the issue of flexibility and increased funding. And I'm done. Sorry. Thank you.
No apologies. So we will move to number 4 on our first category.
Okay. Each local district should have control and flexibility with their school calendar to ensure school districts to align their calendar to promote such programs as career and college promise and enable schools to complete the fall semester prior to the winter break, a natural time to change semesters, at a natural time to change semesters. So we're just asking for a little flexibility with the calendar and allow our boards and our professional advisory committee to get in and look at those calendars and make it fit Union County, not North Carolina. Because what necessarily goes on in the eastern part or in the western part should necessarily drive what Union County needs. So we just need that flexibility so we can get the first semester done before winter break. And that would be just a natural occurrence rather than to prolong it.
Representative Birdie starts this round.
Yeah. When the legislature first mentioned that, and this is quite a few years ago, that we believe very strongly in local control, I jumped on board right away. It's just a natural for me. The closer you get to the need, the better decisions they're going to make. I've also been appointed to a committee, and it's called Economic and Job Growth. And I know some of the opposition, and of course we see the opposition at the coast is the tourist industry. And you can make that analogy if you want. You can see how that works. But I just have to say that I think the state should basically stay out of the calendar business, other than requiring that you meet the certain, the day requirements that you have to be there. And if the tourist industry or any other industry needs to fight it out, they can fight it out locally and let them decide. And that ultimately, I believe, will be the best decision. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Tucker.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, thank you for the question. I'm going to take a little bit of different tact on that. We would want, all four of us, school flexibility for the superintendent of schools. But I can tell you legislatively, it is going to be an impossibility because you have the tourist industry in the mountains and you have the tourist industry in the east. And we can't get support in the Senate and they can't get support in the House to make that calendar flexible. I don't know what else to tell you. We've taken 3 or 4 or 5 runs at it. We get blocked because of the tourist dollar, which is the third most generated dollar in the state behind federal government and behind agriculture. So I don't see much hope in getting that movement. I'm just trying to be candid and tell you the truth on it. Let me just follow up one thing. The other thing, back to your original question as well, just briefly on per pupil funding. A lot of the districts that those statistics are compared to, in those districts, the school board has taxing authority, so they can raise taxes and do more per pupil funding. And in a lot of areas for new construction that impacts the schools, they have impact fees. So I tried to have an impact fee to be able to help fund schools here in the county when I was a county commissioner. And when I got to Raleigh, it hit the wall. So there's no support for that even today.
Ms. Davis, thank you for the question. It's, again, I fully support, went to Raleigh to advocate that, put in several bills. I know before the legislature passed and said you can't start before certain dates and everything, we actually moved the date up in Union County. We actually had a lot of parents that did not like that. And so it's not born even in Union County across the board, but as one who's been involved in education, I support it. I fully support it. I understand the benefits of getting testing before the winter break. I get that. But it's not universally shared. As my colleagues have said, it's a matter of commerce and economics and parents' wishes, actually, to not lose what they call their summer break. And it's just that simple.
I hope you win. I'll do everything I can to help you. And I have, and I will continue to do so. That's it.
That's it for the round.
I started.
Okay, wonderful. That brings us to our second category, safety and student well-being. We will begin with number 1.
We would like to ensure that when students come to school, they have access to mental health resources, counselors, and social workers to help provide comprehensive services to students and families. We would like the legislature to consider decreasing the allotment ratios for instructional support, enabling the school system to hire more mental health workers, social workers, and counselors.
You got that.
Yeah.
Senator Tucker, we'll start with you.
Well, I was not on the school safety task force like these other gentlemen were. I do think that we need to enhance schools from being a soft target. There are many opportunities and many discussions. I look at the school safety in Israel. They haven't had a school shootings in 21 years, but they do have 3 doors you go through, and all the schools are on lockdown. They have automatic locks so that if there's a fire, they can get out. I think on the school task force and even in this budget, there'll be monies coming for school safety, and I'll let Representative Horn or Representative Ard elaborate on that. Thank you.
Great point and great question. I think regarding the specifics about the allotment ratio, the question I think gets at the safety and the broader need of students dealing with issues. The commitment from our school safety task force, you will see monies coming out addressing health professionals, counselors, and everything. We know that. That has to be a part of the situation. I don't know that it's going to be done in the mechanism you suggest, and that's lowering the ratios for an allotment. It won't happen that way because it's so important. We're not going to give flexibility. We're going to say, here's the money to spend it in this place. And so I think the form of it will be more restricted and purposeful. The other thing we're working at is the mental health component of this. To do that requires maybe looking at Medicaid and things of that nature, seeing what we can do to leverage our state dollars, bringing that into the equation. That's a longer process. So we will do something in immediate, and we have long-term plans for funding to continue that. I was very proud in Union County, on its own initiative, took school health nurses and county stepped up with funding, and we put nurses in there. And I think by the grace of God, we haven't had a tragedy like that. And we've got fantastic people who are dedicated to that. But there's a tension between our freedom and our security. And nobody wants to see a Fort Leavenworth here in order for kids to go to school. So we have to be careful of that. I know in Union County, in Piedmont, we've got a very open campus, and it's very difficult. But the issue about mental health and the support, it's definitely come out of the school safety task force. You'll see something on that.
I had quite the primer on school psychologists just a few days ago from Sarah Ryan, who I believe is here in the audience, I learned a lot from Sarah, who is a school psychologist here in Union County. I do sit on the school safety task force, so I know some of the recommendations that are coming out that come before the General Assembly. It's to spend a lot more money, not a little. It's to try and tighten things down to the greatest extent possible, and given the short run-up we've had on this. We've had lots of people come and talk to us. There's two fundamental issues. There's the immediate, right now. What are we going to do today to keep something tragic from happening? And then there's the long term, which is the mental health aspect. We've got to do them both. It's not an either or. I think that you will see in the next couple of weeks significant movement by the General Assembly in dealing with school safety issues. And I think you'll be, by and large, pretty pleased with it.
I too, like Senator Tucker, we aren't on the safety task force, so we're looking forward to our briefing on what it's going to be. But I did make just a note before I came here on this subject, and Representative Arp did kind of mention it, is that you ask for the funding within a certain parameters, the allotment ratios, and I said I believe it should be a separate line item because of the fact that what if you need those allotments for what you got them for in the first place? Then you have nothing. We just add more. So I think it'd be a separate line item. Just to bring you out of Union County for a minute, where it gets a little bit more tense in the safety realm, is my Anson County. I think it's the safety becomes much more acute because we deal with other issues that a lot of things that you don't hear, a lot of teachers probably don't hear. It's the weapons violence and the drug violence and violence against school personnel, and that's important also. I don't even know what the statistics are in Union County, but I know what they are in Anson County, and I'm just shaking my head. I'm going, oh my gosh, what do we have here? But when we do this funding, I think we got to make sure that we do an assessment as to the level of safety needs in one and the level of safety needs in the other, and make adjustments instead of a proportional for everybody gets a certain amount. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we will move to item number 2.
Piggyback on number 1. If we know that the monies are not allotted for additional counselors, social workers, and other professionals that help our kids' mental health, we it should be some type of professional develop to help teachers notice when a kid is in some type of distress. We need to know, to be able to recognize this is another hat we need to put on. We need to know when that child is experiencing some type of a mental breakdown. Right now, that was not, when I went to school, it was not a part of my study in early childhood education, how to sit back and notice when these kids are in distress, when they are beyond what we can talk them down in the classroom. We see a lot of things, if teachers would have been trained in a lot of the things, the tragedies that happen in the past of other schools, thank God not Union County, that maybe if that one teacher could have noticed that and been trained to notice these different things and went and probably talked to a counselor about this child, talked to a social worker. We need that professional development. That's something that we need in Union County, I feel anyway. So with that being said.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Fully understand and couldn't agree with you more. First of all, going back, we are going to be providing, I think, as a universal agreement that we want to provide more funding for those professionals, because here's the real issue. I want my math teachers teaching math. I don't want them being counselors and everything. I want my English teacher teaching English, even though I didn't do well there. I need a lot of help still there. I need my teachers teaching, and I need to bring alongside them these other professionals that help in this need. Quite frankly, I don't know why you need a law to do professional development that's on the urging needs. You don't need the General Assembly. I'm one who says it's not for too many laws already that we have these problems. We have too many laws, quite frankly, I think. So, you don't need a law to tell you in the profession that this is the emerging issues and that we've got to have professional development. Just do it. DPI should do it. I mean, and within your curriculum instruction. It shouldn't come down to a law that says, well, you have to do that. But I would say, and Representative Horn talked about, there's many in the upcoming proposals that school safety talked about to do that, to provide that additional training. But in a long sense, we've got to be careful not to make every teacher additional duties. I mean, that's what I hear all the time, is the exasperation of things that we've laid upon them and laid upon them and laid upon them, that they can't do the things that they're professionals to do. You understand what
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Thank you.
I really don't have anything to add to. I just don't have enough expertise in this. Well, let me say, I did have a conversation with a teacher a while back on the phone, and we were talking about issues dealing with teachers, and this issue came up. And all I want to say is that I got such a learning lesson from this teacher of all the things that you can come up with. I was just amazed at here I'm thinking, well, kid rustles around a little bit, or maybe he's hungry or something, but I mean, she just went through and said, no, these are the things we see. And just so for the record, I got to say, I got a schooling on that issue in particular, and it made an impression. Thank you.
I'll just say briefly that schools are in a quandary. Schools in a 7 or 8 hour day are supposed to address all the dysfunctions in our society. Dad's not in the home. I spent 6 years working in the projects in Charlotte. I've seen where poor children can learn if they have the proper structure. Mental health issues in the school, really not trained to deal with them. I've seen a lot of things since I've been in the Senate, but I don't know if the state's going to come on and work mental health through DSS or not. I do remember the superintendent at the chamber meeting the first time we met, as he did his rounds to the schools and asked the students what they needed. If I recall correctly, they told you that they just needed someone to listen. I don't know what the solution is to that, except more counselors and more money and more instruction to be able to deal with that. But a lot of times the school system has taken the discipline out of the classroom for the teacher. And the school system is also afraid of the litigious or legal lawsuit because they reprimand or send a child home from school or even say that they may have some mental illness. So you guys in the school system are in a very difficult quandary to be able to make those calls and probably end up in a lawsuit anyway. Thank you.
We will move to our third and final item for safety and student well-being, but I do want to recognize that we are at the 1 hour mark, and with everyone's approval, we will move forward. Okay, very good. So our third item is, I will turn over to you.
Okay, this one says, provide an increased allotment formula for special education students in order to assist in the implementation of a free and public education for students with significant social, academic, and emotional needs.
That is one of the task force recommendations for, I told you we have this joint task force on how we fund education. Right now, we have put an artificial cap on funding education, special needs education. It was 12.5% from the time it was instituted. This year, for the first time, we changed it, albeit we only moved it to 12.75%, but it was a movement. But the reality is we're not going about it the right way. We're not addressing the actual needs of individual students. We know that a kid with cerebral palsy is going to have a much higher demand for services than a child with dyslexia or with a stutter. That's not to say that the child with dyslexia, dyscalculia, or a stutter doesn't need help. Of course they do. But we need to be able to direct funds as needed to the children that need it. And that's exactly what this task force is going at. And I think you're going to be very pleased with the outcomes on that particular issue.
Real simple, and it's mainly a follow-up. I believe it's important that we fund the actual student needs instead of tying it to a formula where we share an amount and then try to split it up accordingly. It just doesn't work because ultimately you have to take it from someplace else anyway. So let's get right down to it and fund the actual needs of the individual students. Thank you.
Quickly, just a comment. I wished I could paint a rosy picture on this. Again, the schools are in a quandary because they have to take all comers, no matter what situation physically or mentally a child's in. So that's number one. And number two, we have 11,000 children in this state on the innovation waiver list. That's the list that gets a child special language. It's a very difficult population. It's a very expensive population. Some of the children that are in the Medicaid innovations waiver list cost $1 million a year to treat, but they deserve to live just as much as anyone else. But we've got a lot of kids that need a lot of help and a lot of parents that need a lot of help, and we provide 250 or 300 slots a year, but there's still 11,000 on the waiting list. Sorry.
Difficult issue.
And I know during my time, some of these children are the most costly to educate, and at the same time, they're worth every penny, because to that family, to that child, and our duty and our responsibility is to educate every child. We don't get to pick and choose, nor should we. So we've increased the funding specifically, as Representative Horn said, targeted to that area. The other thing is these children tend to have very involved parents, and bringing them as part of the solution. So we've given more opportunities in terms of education savings account and up to $9,000 for these children to get the education that the parents and the school system together collaboratively think that this child should get. There's not always money for everything so we have to limit our resources to make them go as far as we can. But bringing this collaborative effort in with these parental choice options and making sure the parent believes that that child is receiving everything that we can give them at schools and what resources are. That's the first step in what we should be doing. So, and that has passed already. That's being done.
Okay, that concludes our second category, and we will move to our final category tonight, teacher remuneration and preparation. Number one.
Restore teacher preparation programs such as the Teacher Cadet Program and the Teachers Fellows Program to enable teachers to begin their careers without the enormous cost of student loans.
All right.
Well,
I'm really, I'm very proud to say that the North Carolina General Assembly has restored the Teaching Fellows Program, and in fact has significantly upped the amount of money. It was under the old system, it was like $6,300 a year. It's now over $8,000 a year. We have focused this effort right now in two areas. One, STEM fields, where we are really desperate for teachers come in and teach. I mentioned earlier, biology, science, math, science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, and also for working with underserved kids in underserved areas. So we're pushing forward with that. We are already planning an expansion of that program. We just want to make sure we get it right. But it is in place. It's been signed into law. It's a go. The Teacher Fellows, which is a terrific, a nationally known program, is back in and on. Teacher Cadets, we are beginning to restore the Teacher Cadet Program. We're working as well with our high schools and community colleges on early college, getting these kids a quicker start. And then you may be aware, may not be aware, that University of North Carolina at Charlotte has just opened a
Early college.
Innovative high school to focus on attracting teacher candidates. So we're getting them in high school now and getting them prepared, getting a fast start, which is saving them as much as 50% of their tuition that they would have. Last point on that is, as you may know, we have implemented NC Promise. We're we're doing two things. One is we're putting a lid on fees. Your fee rises are capped. And secondly, we're testing in 3 schools a $500 a semester tuition. And recognize that North Carolina is already, as great as our colleges are, and we are world renowned for our higher education, North Carolina is in the bottom quartile of all the states in the nation for college education costs. So we are doing all that, plus, as I said, we've already got it on the books, on the Teaching Fellows.
As one of the chairs of House Community College, I just want to put in a plug for the community college on this and say that Representative Horn mentioned the NC Promise, et cetera, but you remember that you don't have to go to UNCC to get a 4-year degree. You can go 2 years to our community college or any community college, and then 2 years after that. And once you get out of the community college, you're guaranteed admission. So I think that's also part of it. And the reason I mention that is because you mentioned the ending up with very little debt. I think that's an option that should be considered. We've done the parity with the courses, so we aren't getting caught saying, I'm sorry, we're not going to accept that course. Obviously, but it's got to qualify, but so that's a plug for community colleges, and I think it's a good idea to take advantage of that reduced tuition. Thank you.
If you want to comment on that.
We've restored them. We're going back. I mean, it's already passed.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2, professional development requirements are constantly changing and adapting, making it difficult for teachers to maintain licensure. Please help encourage teacher professional development by funding a differentiated teacher salary scale for teachers who complete advanced degrees and providing funding for an NCAT and the NC Teachers Academy.
Got me first. That's you. Go ahead.
I love this one.
I know you, yeah. We've had hours upon hours of discussion on advanced degrees, and I guess we come to somewhat of a consensus, and we have to reevaluate that. We believe that the advanced degrees in specific teaching areas are like a master's degree in chemistry or biology or, you know, that type of thing is helpful. And then we go and say, all right, and I hear a lot from teachers say that this advanced degree, even though it might not be that, it'd be in education, for example, but it helps me and it helps the student. And I can't argue Union County and a lot of those folks that do have the advanced degree, even though we've searched and we tried to find the data that supports that, and we have a difficult time finding it, but yet we get the teachers say that this is important and it does pay off. One of the things that I would say when we get the advanced degrees, and I guess I want to make this point on that is, if the state is going to pay or help pay for that advanced degree, and once you get the advanced degree, I'd ask that you stay in teaching for a little while at least. Have a set time to where, okay, you've reached that advanced degree, the state has helped paid for it or paid for it, whatever. You stay in teaching for X amount of years, and then you can go into administration or whatever, because the biggest argument that we've got is that the teacher will go and get a master's degree in education, for example, and then bolt right out into administration as soon as they get the degree. And that's the only thing I would mention on that. Thank you.
I was around in 2011 when we were in a difficult bind, $2.5 billion in the hole, and we eliminated the increase in teacher pay for master's degree based on all the data that we had. National certification shows that student outcome is better through national certification. The master's degree was kind of last survey I read was by Harvard, which is not exactly a conservative think tank, and they said that giving a master's degree, giving increased compensation for a master's degree did not increase student outcome. So that's kind of where we came up with the decision that was made by the education committee at that time.
I think the question there is one of return. You know, what are we getting for our dollars? If we can see better outcomes, that's where we need to invest our dollars. The second thing that, and Representative Brody touched on a little bit, so many times these advanced degrees are seen as salary ways to move up in salary. And I agree, I understand that. But that's where the system may be wrong. I want those who are best educational leaders to be the principals and assistant principals and so forth. But at the same time, I don't think we want our best teachers to jump track and try to be building level principals either, if their best job and their focus is in the classroom and teaching. Not everyone wants to, nor should be forced to have a higher salary in teaching versus going into the leadership and so forth. And so I don't want to see the advanced degrees to become just a mechanism for increased salary, but really focus on the outcomes of student learning. Do we get a better is it measurable? What is the data? Do we break, was what Senator Tucker said, the difference in data outcomes? Can you show us something and help us develop so that we can advocate that we have better student achievements by investing in teachers with these, because they stay in the classroom and they have those skills and can have better student outcomes?
I'll speak to that for a second. Having my national board certification, and I just graduated this weekend with my master's.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Which are very different.
They are very different. And so to say that one is going to provide a better outcome, both of those are focusing on best practices for student achievement. In my eyes, as an educator, I'm going back for those things to better myself so that I can better my students. So I do feel like I should be treated and respected as a professional, and I guess compensated or rewarded for that. However you want to look at that. That was not my motive, because like I said, I just got my master's knowing there was no increase. However, I do feel like that is something that needs to be looked at, being compensated. Thank you.
So that brings us to our final item to be spoken on tonight. I will turn it back over to you, Ms. Davis.
Got it on. We believe that the pay for teachers in North Carolina should be above the national average at all levels of experience, and that this compensation should not be solely tied to student performance.
Hey, I'm happy.
Because I was right back.
Go ahead, Craig. I will follow.
I agree that teacher compensation should not be tied to a student performance on a test. That's crazy. We've all had bad days and good days, and days when everything seemed to work, and days when you couldn't sell $20 bills for a nickel. That's just the way it is. The teachers need and deserve to be treated as professionals and compensated just exactly like that. There is no question that we don't pay our teachers sufficiently. There's no question about that at all. I've supported that since I've been in the legislature. I think all of us have supported that since we've been in the legislature. Now, the interesting part of the national average, and I would love to say that's my goal, is to ensure, and it is my goal really, to get teachers above the national average. But I also want to point out a couple of things that I think are important. And those things are, number one is North Carolina is not New York, thank God, or Massachusetts, or even Illinois, where the cost of living is ridiculous. Second thing I'd like to point out is I am very proud to tell you that North Carolina is among the very few states in the nation that have fully funded an excellent benefit program for teachers. And that benefit program, according to the people that analyze that stuff, which is not me, that's way over my head. The benefit package is worth somewhere between $16,000 and $21,000 a year. I don't know. I'll take the lowest part, 16, but it's funded. Whereas we've seen other states which have higher pay rates, but a benefit package that either is not commensurate or is not even funded. So that's fine, and certainly the new teachers, they're going to live forever and never get sick. So, okay, just pay me more. Us older folks, I'm a little concerned about my benefit package, and I want to make sure it's there when I need it. And North Carolina has done that. Do we have work to do? We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. But, and I know that teachers, and I get chastised all the time for talking about average pay, because there's probably no one or very few people at the average pay. An average means that there's a lot of people making less, and there's some people making more. And if there's enough making more, that changes the average. So I'm not even going to get into that. I'll just say that since I've been in the General Assembly, we have added just about $1 billion to teacher pay. $1 billion. It's actually $938,680,000 to teacher pay. Not enough? No, it's not enough. I don't for 1 second say it's enough. But for the last 5 consecutive years, we've raised teacher pay. We are on a track and we will be raising it again. And as long as I can have something to say about it, which may only be a few more months, but we're going to continue to raise teacher pay. And we need to. We need to because it's the right thing to do. We need to in order to attract and retain high quality teachers in our classrooms. We need to make teaching kids the #1 priority, not forcing people to move into administration so they can make more money, but we want to keep high quality teachers in front of every kid, and we want to put every kid in front of a high quality teacher. And the first thing we have to do in order to do that is pay teachers fairly. We're not there yet, but we're on the way. And I don't expect anybody to, I don't say trust me. That's loose talk from politicians. But we're on the way. I'll stop.
When we went through this, especially when I talked to some of the teachers at the kindergarten, or actually more like 5th grade, because kindergarten is a tough one to do that analysis. They mentioned the pay for performance, and I actually got just a feeling in my stomach to say, how in the world can a teacher address that? Because they do not know who's coming in their door on day one. And I said, this is absolutely ridiculous. You can't do this. But we did it, and I think we're getting a backlash from this. And if the response of the applaud when you had mentioned that is any indication, I think multiply that times everybody, and I think there's a definite consensus that this shouldn't work. This isn't going to work. As far as the average pay, and I think I read some other place that you're saying should be above average, and others are saying should we work to become above average. I think that's important. I have no problem with that. But I wanted to say that because we're on finite budgets, and we can only spend so much that the taxpayers give us, and you may argue that maybe we can tax more, but that's another story. But our prisons are staffed at 75% level. Our correction officers are paid probably the lowest, one of the lowest in the nation. And I think that's important too. I think our highway patrol is where we lose people from the highway patrol because they can go get more money at a local police or sheriff's office. We need to pay DAs. We just increased some pay for DAs and judges, to support people. The problem we end up with is we believe everybody should be above average, but how do we do that with finite amount of dollars? So we just have to make the commitment to, we want to get there. And as Representative Horn said, we are going to do pay raises and et cetera. But I think we as legislators have to address everybody in the state, and we don't have the luxury to just say, we're not going to address you over there, correction prisons or anything like that. We're only going to address teachers. So I support the idea of pay for that. I'd love to be able to say that, North Carolina pays its teachers way above average than all of our neighbors, but we're under some of those constraints too. Thank you.
Let me digress a little bit, Matt. If you'll recall, I've been on time every time and not over my time. So let me go over time. I want to address what I'm retiring. I want to address what some people say, that the legislature doesn't respect teachers. Just briefly to share, my father suffered from PTSD from World War II. He was an abusive alcoholic and died when I was 15, along with my mother at 15. During those formative years, my home life was very unstable, and we didn't have the money sometimes to make it work. And I want to tell you that my teachers paid my $1.25 a week for me to eat school lunch. I can tell you about Ms. Walker, my first grade teacher, Ms. Glasgow, my second grade teacher, Ms. Benfield, my fourth grade teacher, and Ms. Hodges, my fifth grade teacher, who washed my mouth out with soap in the ladies' bathroom for saying a cuss word. So I can tell you about Ms. Byram, who was my sixth grade teacher, and Ms. Joyner, who was my seventh grade teacher, and Mr. Benfield, who paddled me in the eighth grade, and I have not gone to counseling over that yet. Some may think I need to. I respect those people, and most of them were women, only one man. And I can tell you that from my heart, along with my mother, the people who impacted my life, and I have achieved some success in my life, came from those teachers. So as far as this legislator goes, I would never not want to pay you and pay you what you're worth, because each and every day you're always respected by me. But I can tell you that our governor, who someone has said was a pro-education governor, mind you, we've gone from $7 billion to $9 billion since Craig and I have been there. And our governor in his budget spends $700 million more. That's the exact thing that got us in the trouble we were in 2011. The exact reason spending more and not saving for the future when the next recession comes, which puts you guys in a 3 to 5 year stagnant wage. You didn't get a raise, but we want to fund you. And then how do we explain to our friends on the highway patrol that we're going to give the teachers 5 or 6% and only give you a 1.5% raise when you work the weekends and holidays and walk up to cars at 3 in the morning? Because I've ridden with them. Education, without a doubt, is the most important thing we fund in state government. There's nobody going to deny that, but it's not the only thing. So I think Dean is going to address some of the salary issues. Most of the teachers, when they come Wednesday, will be surprised to know that they're probably going to get a raise July 1st from this legislature, because we respect and value teachers, and we don't want to put the state back in the hole where you don't get a raise. But I can tell you that in my experience, spending more than you have, and it's very easy for a politician to say yes to everything. And look, I like Governor Cooper personally. He's a nice man. But you cannot spend more than you take in, because you're going to get in trouble again. And you cannot take the bone that we're going to run over a $300 million surplus this year and a $276 million surplus next year. And he's spending all that to turn around to give to you teachers. That's one-time money. If we give you a raise, we have to come up with that money from now on. And I'm telling you, it is a difficult job that we don't get the credit that we deserve for having done what we've done for teachers and for state employees. Is it enough? Never is enough. More money's always better. But from this legislator to the rest of these guys up here, and I know Craig's car is there every time I leave the building at 8 o'clock at night. This guy served for 12 years on the school board. There's no more pro-education guy than Dean Arp. I can tell you, we respect teachers. Thank you.
I appreciate the question. It's very important. We all work to make a living, support our family. We hopefully can do that which we love. I wanted to kind of step back and kind of frame, and I think it's important to always go back into the history of why we did what we did. When we were coming out of the recession, everybody was hurting. We had cuts, furloughs, rollbacks, and frozen pay. When we were coming out, I distinctly remember, like it was yesterday, we had representative superintendents coming across the state, come together to the General Assembly And we asked them, what is the number one thing we can do to support education coming out of this recession? Because we want to do that number one thing first. We didn't have a lot of money. We were just getting our budget balanced. We were in a $3 billion hole prior to that. By changing the way we did things, we had some surplus and we were able to go. Number one thing, they said raise starting teacher salary, because we're concerned about the inflow of new teachers into the profession. That when our senior teachers retire and leave, we don't have enough coming in to meet the demand. That's the number one thing. Raise it so that they can live on a salary. And so that's what we did. In fact, it took us 2 years to do that. We said we're going to start new teachers at 35,000 rather than 30,000, but it took us 2 years to get there and step it up. Then the next thing was we said, okay, what is your problem now? What do you see happening? And they said, we're losing our mid-career teachers, 12, 15 years. So what did we do? We responded with a pay increase plan that rewarded those middle teachers, and we got them to max pay in 15 years to keep them. Now, 15. Now, what that's done, though, if you can imagine, we've got our max pay here, and we've had what's called salary compression. And so the next thing that we have to work on is this salary compression, where we start to bring that up. But that's why we did it, because we trusted the educational professionals to say, what do you need? And we responded. I'm very pleased to say, not on our information, but according to the NEA, National Education Association, North Carolina ranked #1 in 2017 for the biggest salary growth in the nation. #2 in 2018. And so I hope that you can fairly say that the legislature has put forth effort, a significant effort, to be the #1 in the nation regarding teacher pay. In fact, the 5-year raise is what we're talking about. Different things at different times to solve different problems. This is not the end of it. Nor do I think we reduce everything down to pay. One of the things that is important is I talked to several friends of mine who are teachers, and they said, but Dean, I make less now than I did last year. And I said, but was it because you didn't get a raise? They said, well, no, I got a raise, but my take home is less. I said, why? She said, my insurance is going up. My taxes are going up. Well, guess what? We're concerned about that too. That's why we're trying to lower everybody's taxes. That's why we're fighting. The first year we came in, our Medicaid expenditures from the state, what we call the April surprise, we had a $400 to $500 million shortfall every year in April, right before the revenues come out, and that just sucked all the revenue out of the state. We fixed Medicaid to where last year we had a surplus in there, and now we don't have those budget shortfalls in Medicaid. And so we were able to shore that up to put these efforts going home. We're very, very sensitive to the rising cost of insurance. That's why I don't understand why people are not supportive of the tax reform, the insurance reforms, because what the feds have done with insurance is not working. How many people have healthcare costs going down? You know, everybody. And the state has put forth significant effort to minimize the impact on the employees and to frankly hold harmless that, because the total compensation is what we're talking about. I think it's a passionate issue. One of the things that we've done when you compare steps across, we've raised steps every year. Just in terms of that level ranges from 10 to 30% just in the steps. But as the teacher goes through there's significant increases in terms of gross pay, and I understand that that's what it is. But we also need to work on keeping the deduction, the taxes and the insurance and those costs out, so you can keep more of your money. And we frankly believe that that's how we've grown North Carolina. In fact, North Carolina is rated tops of the state and the nation of our economic outlook and growth because we've lowered taxes and raised pay at the same time. So I don't think those are mutually exclusive. But thank you for that. Thank you for your time. That was my 1 minute.
Just one more thing. I just want to state that 57%, am I wrong? 57% of the total state budget goes to education, Madam
Correct.
Chair. 57%. That's keeping it pretty much a priority.
And I think that percentage is very similar here in the county as well with our county budget.
That's true.
And we're very fortunate to have one of our commissioners here with us tonight, so. Okay, thank you.
Barbara.
Two. So that concludes tonight. I will defer to Ms. Davis and Mr. Bagshaw, if you have any closing statements, if you would like to say anything in closing.
I just want to take a second to thank all of you for coming. I would like to see more of this dialogue continue, maybe on a, maybe,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Continue.
So,
Right.
so thank you, yes.
I would like for you guys, thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to address these issues and work together as a collaborative group. If we could meet more often with Union County and with the teachers, professional advisory committee, our legislators, we need to meet more. We need to come to the table once again, not just when something happens like what's going to happen on Wednesday. We need to continue to meet, continue to work out these issues and make North Carolina or Union County one of the best counties where everybody wants to come and be a teacher.
And we will start with Senator Tucker and let each person have closing comments.
I've stayed within my time limit. Thank you.
I would like just to be collaborative and everything. And so I have a couple of questions, just two.
Cool.
And you guys promised me you're going to give me a list of the tests,
We
federal
promise.
tests, okay?
Yes.
Is that a deal? All
A
right.
deal,
'Cause
yes.
we need to know the specifics. That's better. But also, given everything we talked about, I need your one thing, the number one thing that you think here in Union County that we need to do as a legislator to help.
To help with Union County, I think
The number
address
one thing.
the mental health issues that we have here in Union County. I know I work in a Title I school, and Dr. Houlihan has put a lot of resources in my school at Marshville, but my school is just one of the many. We have not only in our Title I schools that we have a lot of mental issues, we have them in a lot of our schools. That's one thing we need to address if we can get more funding to help out with the mental issues, to provide us with more social workers, training for teachers to address these. Although I know we're not, that's just another hat we're putting on our head, but we're with those kids most of the day. We know when something's not right. I know when a kid comes into my classroom that if he's having a good day or she's having a bad day. I know right away. I know how far to push the issue. I know how far that if that kid needs beyond me, and if there's no one in that school, who do you go to? That's my top concern that I would like for Union County.
Mr. Baggs,
Well, and of course, I'll add to that. It's funding.
you're number one.
My number one. I would say funding, and just to kind of piggyback on that, when you're thinking, I think you kind of addressed it when we talked about our special ed students and meeting those individual needs for students. I think we need to be looking at, I know we're talking, per pupil funding, but there are funds for different programs, whether it's Title I, whether it's our special ed. We need those instructional resources, and it boils down to getting that funding, whether it's per student or per need. We need that money so that we can be most effective to get that student achievement.
I know funding just is a nebulous term, and that's why it's not very actionable, is what I'm saying. If you say increase funding, we say we did, you say we didn't, and then we're missing. If you would shoot me an email or something like that, I mean, break it down or something like that.
I think one of the big things you addressed was our digital resources.
Right.
I mean, right off the top of my head, I am thinking that that's definitely one of the areas that we need.
Second question,
Good.
and this is fair. Do you think North Carolina has increased teacher pay?
Good.
Well, I'm at the top of the scale, so I cannot answer that without saying, not for me. Because I'm at the very top. I'm at the collapse scale. I don't get I'm here because I'm dedicated to the profession. Right here, I'm paying the state to work almost. So my biggest thing is do something for those people who've been in there for the long run. We are not going anywhere. We've been here for 25 plus years. We're going to work. We're going to do what we're supposed to do. We're going to be on this collapse schedule where you hit 25 and you're just there. But we need something to say, we appreciate you. You're here, you're at the top of the scale. You've been through every furlough and whatever you have thrown at us, we have dealt with and say, give me more. Because we are here because of the students, not because I'm making a whole lot of money, but I'm here.
You mentioned you tied the pay to respect and everything. What does that look like? What
does the respect look?
No. What does that pay increase to make you feel respected with pay?
Respected with pay? Well, we're looking at our first year teachers, and they need mentors for the older teacher. Compensate these teachers. I know there's something coming out for mentor pay, but as a teacher, a career teacher, I can't put a number on it because of the fact that I can't put a percentage on it. But people who been in year 29, if you look at their pay, that's with North Carolina pay, we have the same degree. We have and sometimes I work on the weekends. I spend my whole Sundays preparing for my lesson. I spend Saturdays going to the ball field, which I don't have to do, going to see my children play ball. I go to birthday parties. I do all with the extra stuff that I don't have to do, but I do it. Mm-hmm. So what it looks like as respect, you may not be able to pay me what people who with my same degree, my same years of experience, but just make it look at least a little more close to what they're making.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm at the top end as well. Right. So I mean,
congratulations.
Well, thanks. But no, I feel like there's definitely been an effort made, especially, trying to attract teachers, retain teachers, then you've hit that middle tier. Well, that top tier too, I think we need to see some sort of an increment just to kind of, inflation and our we're feeling all that as well, but we're not really seeing as
maybe
much.
Increase longevity pay?
There's no longevity.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Share that with me one more time, Ms. Davis.
There's no more longevity pay.
Oh my goodness.
Can
I answer that for you?
Go ahead.
There is longevity.
I think we have talked, I've been in your office before. We discussed this before.
Yeah.
So,
Ms. Davis.
I know.
In December, you used to get longevity pay in a lump sum.
I sure did.
I would recommend to the legislature as I retire, because this is a confusion that you see. You're receiving longevity monthly instead of in a lump sum. It's still there in what you get, but I would suggest that you change that so that she goes back to getting her lump sum, because a lot of them, I've talked to a number of teachers and they don't think they're getting longevity, even though it's in their monthly pay. And they used it as a Christmas bonus. So the legislature could increase their longevity pay for the senior teachers like these two right here. And that would show they're respected, and just do it in a lump sum in December like they used to, rather than giving it to you monthly, because you are still getting, I promise you, you're still getting it.
Yeah.
Well, what do you, no?
I understand what he's saying, and I know the longevity pay was presented to us when it was taken away, that it was a part of a raise that teachers with longevity would receive. I know it's still coming in my paycheck, but it's not the extra that we were receiving. It was kind of put into our on the regular pay scale, not in addition to
Yes, ma'am.
what we were receiving.
That's fine. And the reason the legislature did that is because it's easier to budget monthly when you're running a business like the state legislature than rather than having come up with all the money in December. But my suggestion would be, as I retire, to you guys change that back to December. The money's still the same, so she knows and feels like she's getting it, because otherwise it's just in your pay and you don't feel like you're getting it. So I would suggest you do it even though you are getting it.
So I'm gonna ask you this question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will it be deducted from my check or be in addition to what I'm already receiving?
Longevity's in addition, right?
Yeah, I mean,
When we moved to, this came out of that teacher group that recommended changes and what we needed to do. They said that that it was more important for teachers to get their longevity, to get that instead of a lump sum, to get it monthly, on their regular paycheck. That was more important to them. So when we changed the pay scale, the first thing we did is we added in to everyone's pay a longevity percentage, as it would have been the same as it would have been if we'd have given you a check at the end of the year. We took that and added it in. Okay, from there, we then increased pay so that the longevity piece was baked into your salary. Now, so if you would rather it not be baked into your salary, we can then pull it back out and give you a check at the end of the year. So it's we were told by the teacher group that they did not want it at the end of the year. They wanted it baked into their salary that they received on a regular basis because it was better for them in budgeting. So we complied with their recommendation. So what I just heard you say is, no, we need to go back. Instead of baking it into your monthly salary, is to send you a check at the end of the year.
That's right.
Well, that's actually probably better for us because we'll make interest on that money that we're holding, which is your money. It's not state money, it's your money. So I don't really think you want us to do that, but if that's what you want, we can do that. But this is one of those that we can meet
I talked to a lot of teachers that don't think they get longevity anymore. Instead of getting it 1/12 at the time, they need a lump sum check like she got for years.
Well, this is one of those
Like
many
a
things
savings
we'll
account.
continue to discuss.
Right.
And that's one thing we can have an open forum on once again. We'll
Right.
sit down with more educators at the level in which they receive that longevity. And
Right.
that's something we could
Right.
all sit down and talk about.
Yes, ma'am.
Here's one thing I'm cautious about.
We need to be wrapping this
Oh,
up.
right.
It is
Yeah.
now 8:20.
Yeah.
We were supposed to be out here at 7:30.
I know,
And
but
I've got a 3-hour drive to get back to Rock.
I know, me too, but this is important. My caution is it's going to look like a deduction to the teachers if we take what was rolled in and then roll it back out. And nobody won't understand that. So my caution is, do you really want to do that? And I think it warrants serious conversation with the teachers
Right.
so that everybody understands what we're doing.
It does.
Before we move forward. So I would, Ms. Davis, I certainly would love to have those conversations as collective going forward. But thank you for that. Thank you.
You're
for
welcome. Thank
both of
you.
those questions.
Okay, Representative Brody.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Davis. I know we're here discussing Union County, but whatever we do, we can't single out Union County. It's going to be spread out throughout the state. So my question to you is, let me back up. When I first started my very first introduction, I said this. So what may be considered a need in one county may be considered a luxury in another. So the point I got is that Union County is a prosperous county. It has a tax base that can afford a lot of things, including, I guess some would call it a generous supplement. But then you have a number of counties around the state, which I happen to represent one, that can't afford it. They finally paid a supplement of $600, and they got that because we ended up adjusting the sales tax adjustment. Otherwise, they don't have the means to tax, and believe it or not, they have one of the highest property tax rates in the state for a county that's so poor, because everything they use has to go into what it is. So my question to you is when we're doing this statewide budget and we're not doing a Union County budget, we're doing a statewide budget, would you be willing to say that Union County will, if you did proportionally, Union County would get this, but would you take a little bit less so we can go and give it to some of the counties that can't afford to do that and allow those people, those kids to have the same quality of education as Union County?
You want to respond to that, or you want me to respond?
I heard that, yeah. No, I heard it. I heard it loud and clear, or not loud and clear, but
Areas like that here.
Yeah. You want to?
Okay, with that,
All right.
I think
I'll take that
we're
as
an
the answer.
hour over, so I
Yeah.
think this definitely is a good stopping point. I want to thank Union County Public Schools Board of Education. I want to thank Dr. Houlihan for being here tonight, Mrs. Davis, Mr. Bagshaw. Please know that your Board of Education, every teacher and educator in this room, know that your Board of Education and the state representatives that you have elected to go to Raleigh to work for you here in the county and in Raleigh truly admire and respect what you do as in your profession. And speaking for every one of our board members, it truly is a sacrifice on our time and our families to be here, but we choose to be here because we love Union County Public Schools. And some of my closest and dearest friends were my children's teachers at Fairview Elementary, Porter Ridge, and Piedmont. And I have the utmost respect. Every single one of us has the utmost respect for your profession. And I hope that by coming here tonight, and I want you to know, I picked up the phone on Thursday, and I started reaching out to our Union County legislators. And they said, if you put this together, we will be there. We will cancel all of our appointments on Monday, and we will get in the car and leave Raleigh because we support Union County Public Schools. So I hope everyone here has enjoyed this discussion, and I want to thank everyone for being here, and we will continue this going forward, I promise you.
Thank you.
So good night, everyone.
I'm about to freeze him. It's cold.